Hello everyone, and welcome to this review. In this review, we're going to be viewing Superdimension Neptunia vs Sega Hard Girls. The game was released in 2017 and was developed by Idea Factory, Compile Heart, and Felistar? However it's pronounced. Anyway, without further ado, let's get on with this review. The game's story has taken a slight twist from the usual Neptunia series, whereas in this release we have IF being the main game's protagonist. Usually it's Neptune who is the game's main protagonist, but in this spin-off for this game it's IF, but Neptune will still tell you that she's the main protagonist anyway. The story starts with IF, who is an adventurer, roaming the ruined wasteland that was once her home. She's searching for the library, housing the world's knowledge, hoping that she can somehow learn a way how to change things that have turned her world into an absolute mess. Along the way, she meets Histoire and finds a girl who can't remember anything about herself or where she came from. Eventually, you end up travelling through time and space on a motorbike that somehow ends up housing the soul of Neptune, and we end up then going through each of Sega's history eras. You travel to the Mega Drive era, the Game Gear era, the Saturn era, and the Dreamcast era. Now, it's a little odd how the Master System doesn't have its own era, or the 32X for that matter, even though it was utter crap, but these do show up as a type of side character during the game's story, so I guess you could kind of say they show up in a sense. During the game, you travel to each era and find that the goddesses are fighting the Sega Hard Girls, and it's basically up to you to stop them from fighting each other. You have to stop the goddesses and the Sega Hard Girls from fighting each other, because it's them fighting each other which causes the world to fall to pieces. Along the way, Segami starts to remember who she is, and once all the CPUs and the Sega Hard Girls are finally on the same page, you battle the game's big boss, the Time Eater. The selection of characters in this game is solely focused on the Sega side of things. What I mean by this is that if you're a fan of the Vert, Blanc or Noir, then you're going to be super disappointed, because they don't show up at all in this game. The main focus on this game is on the Sega era, and because it's the Sega era, you only get Neptune, Netgear, Uzume and Plutia. And then from the Sega Hard Girls, you get Dreamcast, Game Gear, Saturn, Mega Drive and Segami. It is a tad disappointing you don't get characters like Fur or the rest of the cast that usually shows up in these type of games, but I can understand why they're not in it. The Sega Hard Girls do try and make up for the usual cast not being there, but their personalities have changed in an odd way. To make this make any sense, there was a short anime series based on the Sega Hard Girls, and if you watched that and then played this game, then you're going to be really confused as to what the hell's happened to the Sega Hard Girls. In the anime, Dreamcast is essentially an airhead type girl who's always happy and bubbly, yet in this, for some reason she's short-tempered and snaps at people. Mega Drive is extremely shy but really cares about her friends. Yeah, in this she comes across as stuck up and acts like she's got a superiority complex. Saturn is usually silly and throws herself into situations where she becomes a butt of jokes. Yet here she's extremely bland, and I'm not exactly sure she has a personality in this game. The Neptunia girls are all the same as usual, so I was happy about that. However, I did feel like the Neptunia cast had to carry the Sega Hard Girls through this game. I loved the anime of Sega Hard Girls, so when I looked at this game and saw that they had all their personalities changed, yeah, I'm not really sure why Sega did this to the girls, because it would have been much better having airhead bubbly Dreamcast joking with Neptune, or seeing Mega Drive get all shy and nervous around Plutia. Instead we have Sega Hard Girls who don't really feel like they are the Sega Hard Girls. Basically, if you're expecting to see the Sega Hard Girls from the anime, like what I was expecting, well, don't, because they're not there. The Neptunia cast are great, but I was really disappointed to see the Sega Hard Girls not acting like the Sega Hard Girls I already knew. Why this change was made isn't explained, and I personally feel that this was a really dumb move. Graphics? Well, the game's graphics are pretty much identical to the previous games, such as the Rebirth titles. The game doesn't look as pretty as Mega Dimensional Neptunia, that's because that was originally a PlayStation 4 game, while this was released on the Vita and then the PC. The animation style looks very pretty and runs quite well. I was running it on my PC upstairs, which has a GTX 670 installed, and I found the game ran very smoothly. I didn't come across many issues or bugs. The only slight issue I found was that when I first started playing the game and started battle, my game would hang up for about 5 or 6, maybe 7 seconds before anything happened. However, I am pretty sure that this was just my graphics card, because when I played the game downstairs on my other PC, which has a GTX 970, I didn't come across this issue. The game's graphics switch from 2D when they're talking to 3D when roaming the dungeons and when in combat. The game switches from these two types of styles constantly during the game, and it works quite well. When the game switches to 2D, your character sprites are the same ones used from previous Neptunia games. They might have been slightly improved, but I'm not exactly 100% sure. This was done to keep costs down because they can reuse material to make another game. However, they also seem to have done this with a lot of the dungeons as well. If you have played the previous Neptunia games from Rebirth 1 to 3 and others, then you know you're going to expect to see some reused material. But I think all the dungeons here have been used in previous titles. Yes, some have had reworks done to them, they're not all just straight up lifted from the other games and are identical, but instead they took one stage, changed it a little, let's say a stage from the Mega Drive era, and then when you go to the Game Gear era, it's the exact same stage, but maybe you can go past the wall in this era, or maybe the lava is missing in the background, and that's kind of it. I feel like developers made one big stage and then reused it for other Sega eras, but either blocked off certain points or removed the odd bit here and there. And I haven't really felt like this experience since Sonic Adventure 1 on the Dreamcast, where Sonic stages were just cut up into sections for the other characters. The gameplay for Superdimension Neptune vs Sega Hard Girls is essentially the same as previous titles. Combat in the game hasn't changed much, aside from this time you need to earn a meter in order to get a star, which you then have to collect in order to do super moves. You're also given a limit on how often you can use this, which kinda makes sense because I found the enemies in this game much weaker than in previous titles. I'm not sure why, but I found myself clobbering my way through this game without any real difficulty at all, and I didn't use any overpowered DLC weapons or anything like that. I just found that the game's enemies were weaker and didn't cause me much trouble. I found that the same was also for the bosses as well, as all I had to do was raise my limit meter before the battle happened, and then just spam my super moves till I couldn't use them anymore, and then instead just use my special moves to finish off the boss. Another lacking thing in the gameplay is a lack of actual moves. Again, I'm not really sure why they took this route, but in previous games a character would have 1 or 2 super moves, and then a few special moves. Yet in this, there are hardly any. And what you do actually get, you get right near the end of the game, which is also another lacking feature, because the game itself is extremely short. So you end up doing loads of battles with Saturn, maybe doing 2 special moves, and only right near the end of the game do you get maybe 5, 6 special moves available to her. It also takes a very long time for your character to learn their super move as well, which just feels rather disappointing because it feels like I had to wait till I was at least halfway through the game till I got my first character who could use an actual super move. I have already mentioned this, but I do feel it needs to be mentioned again. The game is extremely short. Like, I was seriously disappointed and upset just by how short it was. All the previous Neptunia games, I've gotten at least 70, 80 hours or more out of them, yet with this game, I got less than 20, and with enemies being extremely weak and the story being very short, I felt like I was just ploughing through the game without any real challenge at all. The developers did a good job making the Neptunia world for this game. It does feel like the previous titles, and it does make me believe that I'm yet again back in this gaming world controlled by the CPU goddesses. They do a good job trying to implement the Sega Hard Girls, but with their change of personalities, I feel like they were kind of imposters more than the actual Sega Hard Girls I knew already. The places you're given to explore work for what the game actually gives you. I kind of felt a tad shortchanged on places to explore, as I basically felt I was given one dungeon and then for the other areas just given the exact same dungeon, but then just told I can't pass this part because of a wall or a fallen tree or something along those lines. So, being given the same location 4 times with a blocked off area just kind of felt rather cheap. I also couldn't help but feel that while I'm on the world map, although the game is focused on the Sega side of things, that maybe if I just moved across the screen a little more, like if I just tried to nudge my character a little more to the left or a little more to the right, that I could maybe see Louis or Leanbox. I knew I wasn't going to, but I still couldn't help get this odd nagging feeling that they were there. With what you're given to explore and the resources the game has, it does an okay job. I do feel like it is a Neptunia game, and are back in the world that I love and care for so much, but I don't feel like a lot of time was put into decent locations, or that they really went full throttle with what they could do. I mean, why isn't there a Streets of Rage themed dungeon? Or a Green Hill style dungeon? They could even have done an Echo the Dolphin type level, but nope. Just feels very budget made and lots of opportunities missed. Well, with all this being said, you're probably wondering right now, is Superdimension Neptunia vs Sega Hard Girls worth it? Short answer, if it's on sale, then yes. But do not expect much from it. I went into this game with extremely high hopes, as I loved the anime of Sega Hard Girls, I love Neptunia, and I was expecting an epic crossover. What I actually got was a very short Neptune game with less characters than I'm used to, and then Sega Hard Girls with personalities I didn't recognise. I was kind of expecting the Sega Hard Girls you meet at the start who are fighting the CPUs to be evil clones, or something along that line, and then later on you rescue the real girls later on. Instead, that doesn't happen, and you're left with characters that, if you saw the anime, you just wouldn't recognise. The game is only really made for hardcore Neptunia fans, I would say, and even then, it's very clear that it's been produced on a limited budget, which is a massive shame because this game could have had so much potential, and it just feels like it's been wasted. Just imagine Netgear and Game Gear going through the history of the Game Gear itself, doing levels like Columns and Sonic Drift, and all the jokes they could have done about limited processing power and the Mega Drive having a Master System add-on, the 32X add-on, and such forth. Instead, none of this happens, and again, it just feels like a missed opportunity. Good points of the game. I like the return of the Neptunia cast. I do like the English dub of the cast. I like the combat of the game somewhat, but in this game it kind of feels like it's missing something that the others had. The bad points are the game's extremely short. I got less than 20 hours out of this game, and I will not be replaying this game anytime soon. I didn't like how the Sega Hard Girls personalities have been changed. The levels all seem to be reuses and also short. The game also feels like it's got less enemies in it to me than previous games, and although I got 20 hours out of the game, I was taking my time. I have heard of people are finishing this game in less than 10 hours, and for me, if you are going to pay full price for that, full price is not basically worth 10 hours worth of gameplay. Again, I took my time, I went slowly on this game. Other people will probably just plough through this game and be like, I got 10 hours worth out of that. That wasn't really worth it. The game was released on the Vita originally, but it feels nothing like the previous games in the terms of length or resources that were put into it. Rebirth 1 and 3 were released on the Vita, and I got 70 hours or plus something out of those games. And I also got the same out of 2 and 3, and I just don't get why the same amount of effort wasn't put into this game when it could have been incredible with all the possibilities available to developers here. It just feels like the game is a budget title, done on a very limited budget. They put the Sega Hard Girls in there just to put them in there, and then didn't go crazy with what they could have had. It's not a bad game, it's not a brilliant game either. I played it because I myself am a Neptunia fan, but at the end of it, I was left with a very bitter taste in my mouth, especially after playing something like Mega Dimensional Neptunia, which is perhaps one of my most favourite games ever been made, to then play this. Yeah, I was not too impressed. Again, if you are going to buy this game, I would only buy it if it is on sale, and I wouldn't spend no more than about £6, maybe about $8 on it. It isn't a bad game, just don't go in there with your hopes up. Well, that's it for this review, guys. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.